What the hell are you doing? What? Look, you promised him that you make a YouTube show, and you're doing what exactly? I'll have you know, this Forge World is not going to save itself from an orc invasion. Look, I don't care, okay? You made a promise, you have to keep it. Look, here, wear this. People keep thinking I'm you and asking me to review games and stuff. You do realise we're like the same person? I'm like your id after all. Well, if that's true, what am I? The ego or the super ego? I don't know, it depends on how many characters you make up in the end. Look, whatever, man. Just get on with the show. You're both making us look bad. Anyway, guys, let's get on with the show. Greetings YouTube, Captain Machine here. Back for another video. Greetings YouTube, Captain Machine here. Welcome to episode 1 of the Captain Machine Show, and let's start by having some news. Recently, the supplement Only War was cancelled for Dark Heresy, which was supposed to be their splat book for the Imperial Guard and the Imperial Guardsman career path. And instead, what they've decided to do is repurpose it as another RPG within the Warhammer 40,000 line. So this will make it the 5th RPG for Warhammer 40,000. There's a lot of controversy about it. A lot of people are angry about this decision, don't think it should be made as a proper game. I personally am quite excited about it. I genuinely feel that in a scenario like this, where they're still publishing all the other splat books, like the Lathe Worlds, Blood and Martyrs, Book of Judgment, things like that, while they're still publishing those, they must have had enough information. And to be fair, there's an entire army and hundreds of pages of backstory to use to justify another game. Will it get the full support it deserves, or will it just get a couple of books and then they'll leave it? Only time will tell, but I personally am quite excited about it. Links down below to the website. Also, there is a Kickstarter for Deadlands Noire, which is Shane Hanlon's new game. I myself have personally backed it so I can get a PDF copy when it comes out. I haven't gone for the physical hard copy funding level because I feel it's a bit too expensive, especially considering I don't live in the US, so it would cost me another $20 on top of what I'd already bid for the shipping, and I'd much rather wait for the physical copy to come out, because as it looks at the moment, there is no indication why it wouldn't come out. This has earned so much money. Basically, it's the Deadlands setting, which we all know and love, the cowboy system, basically, and they've advanced it to the 1940s pulp era and the noir period, and it's going to be a lot of fun. If you go to the website down below, to the Kickstarter page, there's about a week left on the bidding. If you want to put money down towards it, you can do. There's also, if you want to be entertained, there's 3 episodes of what looks like a 4-episode series for a show they've invented for this promotion called Hardboiled and the Big Easy, which is a lot of fun to listen to. It's very genre specific. So, there you go. Okay, on to the review section of the show. And basically, this is something I've reviewed before in the past. If you go to my playlist on my page, you'll find all my past reviews, and this will be amongst them. But I thought, giving it a new style, with a new flavour, it might give you a fresh perspective on what I think about the game. On top of that, for all the new viewers out there, they can see what I think about it. So, today we're going to be talking about one of my favourite games of the current RPG crop, and that is the Pathfinder RPG, or more precisely, we were talking about the Pathfinder RPG core rulebook, and what the big book is too. But rather than spend 10-15 minutes blabbing on about the history of Paizo, let me condense it into something much quicker.
Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson created Dungeons & Dragons as a role-playing game using the miniature rules called Chainmail and created the company's Tactical Studies Rules, or TSR for short. Dungeons & Dragons was insanely popular and started the whole concept of role-playing games or RPGs for short, with numerous books, settings, editions under their belt. TSR, however, was still major trouble. Some people blame Dragon Dice, but in reality it was a case of publishing more books to pay for the cost of last string of books they published, including a run of the New Player's Handbook, despite the fact that most of their customers already had that book. TSR was on the verge of bankruptcy when it was bought out by Wizards of the Coast, a company that made it big on the sales of their collectible card game Magic the Gathering, buying RPG properties left, right and centre. Along with 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons, Wizards recruited Paizo Publishing, and they were given the task of publishing the long-running Dragon and Dungeon magazine, who in turn introduced the world to the idea of the Adventure Path, a series of linked adventures leading from first to high level in one continual story. However, with the advent of 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons, Wizards wanted to make the whole game online and including a digital version of the Dragon and Dungeon magazine. Paizo was officially out of a license of their cash cow, and rather than upgrade to 4th edition, they kept producing material for the open game license for 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons, now an out-of-print game. Despite this, the magazine Pathfinder was still making money, along with a string of other books in their Forgotten Realm-esque world. Finally, seeing dollar signs in the future, they started work on the world's first public RPG beta test of their own game, Pathfinder RPG. After thousands of feedback comments, the final version of Pathfinder was released to positive reviews, and since gone on to outsell the game that spawned it.
So, as you can see, Paizo had a rather interesting ride, and more precisely, the Dungeons & Dragons game has had a rather interesting ride to get to this point where Paizo have been able to publish this book. It is a massive, massive book, but despite that, it's very reasonably priced for a book of its size. Most companies that produce a book of this size charge a lot more for it, and I honestly believe that this is a really, really good value for money. Is everything you need to play the game in here? Yes. If you want monsters, you are going to need other products and other books, or you can just make up yourself. But if you're just running a campaign that's mainly centric towards demi-humans and humans, all of which are covered in here, then you won't need any other books at all to run the game. Everything you need to know about generating a character, playing the game, the magic system, the treasure system, and GMing in general are all contained within these pages. However, there are some downsides, and I'm going to quickly go through them now. Now, as a veteran of the Dungeons & Dragons since AD&D 2nd edition, and progressing up to 3rd edition, which I loved to bits, this is a very hard transition to make. Not because it is so different to 3rd edition, it's because it is so similar. It is very, very similar, however, there are numerous small changes which make a much, much better game. However, you have to pay careful attention to those changes. For example, when you level up a character in this and you are your chosen class, you tend to find you have the option of either an extra hit point or an extra skill point. Most people take the hit point, but some people might want the skill point. This is a tiny little rule which is on one tiny little paragraph within the book and is never repeated again to my understanding within the book. It is a case of, if you are going to approach this as a player who's played 3rd edition or 3.5, I would recommend you read this from start to finish, or at least read the sections applicable to you from start to finish, because you are going to find out stuff that you either misunderstood from AD&D 3rd edition, or not AD&D, D&D 3rd edition, or you're going to encounter brand new rules which you never heard before, and you're going to think to yourself, that's not bad. But what does this actually do? Why aren't you going to play Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition compared to this? Well, the first obvious one is the fact that Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition is no longer in print. Granted, there is a thriving second-hand market out there for really cheap copies of the Player's Handbook, the DMG and the Monster Manual for 3rd edition. That's not a problem. However, I honestly believe that this is an upgrade to that. This is effectively Dungeons & Dragons 3.75. It's a very, very big upgrade in terms of the enjoyment of the game in general. Yes, there is some power creep involved with it, but overall everyone has the same level of power creep, or more precisely, everyone is on a roughly even level these days. They've done one rather interesting thing, and they took a couple of classes that were in 3rd edition and which had no dead levels. Monk was a good example of it, and they've expanded it to everything within the game. Basically, with a few very minor exceptions, every single class in here has no dead levels. Leveling up is not a boring process anymore. You're always going to get something new, be it a new feat, an upgrade to your abilities, a new talent, a new spell. So there's going to be something you get every time you level up in this game. And if you're playing a level-based game, you don't want to be going through 2 to 3 different levels before you get something interesting. You want to be getting something interesting constantly, and it does such a good job with it. On top of that, they've expanded some of the classes considerably. In fact, most of them have had a good makeover. The biggest one was the Sorcerer, because the Sorcerer always was a poor cousin to the wizard. It could cast more spells, granted, but its spell progression was much worse, and overall it was just a machine that spammed magic missiles or fireballs when it got access to them at a much later level. In this, you get to choose where your power came from, and that in turn not only determines your free spells you get on top of your regular spells, but also determines how your body changes to accommodate for this energy coursing through you. All of the magical schools for the wizard, like the necromancy, abjuration, evocation, transmutation, they've all been reworked. They're all interesting, they're all new. Playing a universalist is still an option and they're still entertaining, but there is plenty of good reason to play a specialist in this game. Clerics have got a complete overhaul in terms of what their domains can do, so on with druids, and so on and so forth. It goes on and on and on. Everyone's had something to do with it. And I honestly believe it's more fun and a lot harder to pick your favourite class within this game. I would say the only downside to this game at all, if there was one, beyond obviously the minor issue with having to reread the rules, but if you play a new game you should read the rules anyway. The only downside is, as a new gamer, and everyone used to say back in the day that if you're a new gamer, go play Dungeons & Dragons, because that's where everyone starts. And with 4th edition flopping so hard it hurts, and 5th edition a long, long way away, I would say that for those people that were going to play Dungeons & Dragons, I would say go play Pathfinder instead. The only downside is this is a rather big book. How many pages are we talking about here? It's 550 pages in total, and that is very daunting to a new gamer. Very daunting indeed. Granted, as a player, you don't need all of this. In fact, you only need, say, the first 7 or 8 chapters, and the rest of it is just spells. If you're not playing a spellcaster, you don't have to worry about that, or if you are, you can obviously learn it as you go. Magic, which is all something to do with the GM, what they do. GM. There's a lot, basically. The good second half of this book is completely relevant to you if you're just a player character. So I would say that it's not user friendly in terms of approaching new players. However, since I last reviewed this, and since I made the comment that this deserved its own starting box set like the old Dungeons & Dragons used to have back in the day, Paizo have made a new starter box set. So one day I may talk about that when I get my hands on it. But for the time being, if you're an experienced gamer, or you're a gamer that's prepared to wade through such a large book, I highly, highly recommend Pathfinder. My group plays this constantly, we find great enjoyment from it, and out of all, I give this a score of 4 out of 5. Yeah. Okay guys, this is the mailbag. This is where I'll be responding to emails, messages, or video responses on the show. And I picked one out of the archives that I thought was quite good. It was a topic of conversation I wanted to cover. So here we go. This is from, and I apologise if I'm butchering this name, OK Dully? OK Dully? And he's asking about the Fallout pen and paper RPG. Hey, since you played this game, I was wondering if it's any good, because me and my group are looking for something new and really into the Fallout 1, 2 and 3 games. So basically I was wondering if the rules are any good and quick to understand for everybody. Thank you for your time in advance, and sorry if my English isn't correct, I'm Dutch. Smiley face. Keep the good videos coming. Great, thank you for the compliment at the end there. It's greatly appreciated. And don't worry about your English is fantastic. I've met plenty of people born and bred here in England or in America that can't even string together a sentence, let alone the fact that's the only language they can understand. So don't ever have to apologise for your English if it's genuinely not an issue. Right, okay. With regards to this game, yes, I did mention in the past I've played the Fallout pen and paper RPG, and my honest advice is do not play it. And I hate saying that, I really do hate saying that, because I know that every single game is a labour of love for somebody, be it the author, or the contributors, or the playtesters. Somebody somewhere has put their heart and soul into this game. And I get that, I really do get that, but this is not a good RPG, and I'll explain why. Basically, when Fallout 1 was being made, they wanted to use the GURPS system, the actual physical GURPS system, as the mechanics behind all of the dice rolling in the background of the video game, to explain what was going on and to give you a progression of skills and mechanics and all the rest of it. And at some point during the process, Steve Jackson came pulled out and said, no, we do not want the GURPS system associated with this, for whatever reason that may be. And so in the end, the company that made Fallout instead made their own game called Speacil, I think it is. And what they did was they made the game which ran in the background of Fallout 1 and 2, which were great games, really good games, and then they put a bit of polish on it and released it as an RPG. I've never actually physically seen this in any shops or on any websites or eBay sellers or anything like that. To best of my understanding, this was never actually released for money. It's only available to download for free. The one I played was somebody's downloaded copy. However, that being said, even though you can get this for free, I'm not 100% sure on the legality of that. You'll have to check up on that. But the point of the matter is, even with that fact, I wouldn't recommend it because it's not very good. It makes a very good system for a computer game. It makes a terrible system for an RPG because how complicated it is in the wrong way. The main problem is action points. When it comes to action points, your dexterity stat determines how many actions you can have around, be it for movement, activities, attacking, reloading, anything like that. And it's one of these weird genre games whereby having a really high stat in one particular stat is good beyond everything else. It doesn't matter if you've got a high dex, doesn't matter if you've got high intelligence, high constitution. If you've got a high dexterity, you are more godlike than anything else around there because you can move faster, you can do more things, you can fire your gun more, you can swing your blade more. And the honest truth is that against a flurry of attacks like that, or a flurry of activity like that, most people can't keep up. It's the same reason why the Wiseman system has this problem as well. But there you don't use dex, you use initiative, but I may talk about that in the future. Overall, I would say that it's not a fun game to play. And if you want to play something set in the Fallout universe, then I applaud you because it is a fantastic universe to take part in. There are plenty of games out there, including an RPG based on the Fallout universe, although I don't think that was ever published in the end. There are plenty of post-apocalyptic games out there. I personally, depending on the style, I would either use Savage Worlds if I want to go for a light-hearted pulpy game, or if I was going for something much more serious and much more deadly, I would use a basic role-playing system. So I hope that answers your question, and for those of you guys out there that didn't know about this, hopefully I've educated you a little bit about the subject. Okay guys, and on to the final segment.
All we want to do is eat your brains. We're not unreasonable, I mean no one's gonna eat your eyes. All we want to do is eat your brains. We're at an impasse here, maybe we should compromise. If you open up the door, we'll all come inside and eat your brain.
I always did love that intro. Zombie Watch for me was a project I developed a long time ago, which I never really put much effort into, and it really kind of floundered at its very first stumbling steps out of the blocks, as it were. And I hope to rectify that by including it as part of a segment of the show. Basically, there are several hundred different things to talk about when it comes to the zombie genre, which is just growing in popularity at the moment. I may at one point in the future go on to other creatures like werewolves or vampires, but for the time being, zombies, for me, hold enough entertaining stuff that I can find something to talk about. So today we're going to be talking about the original that started it all, George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, or more precisely, the one that started the popularisation of the zombie genre. Because as any aficionado of the zombie genre will know, White Zombie, which predates this movie, is actually the first movie to include the zombies as we know them today. Or at least use the word zombie. However, George Romero's film, despite the fact never using the name for his creatures in the movie, popularised the concept and went on to make numerous films on the topic, which people have emulated over the years. Now, it's a film that is charged with a lot of emotion to it, because a lot of the original stuff that George Romero did in his original trilogy were parables for things out there. One of the main key tenets and one of the key ideas behind the zombie genre is always been that the zombies themselves are slow and they're weak, and by themselves they're not that dangerous. In big numbers maybe so. But it's the people around you which make the situation dangerous. When normality is thrown out of the window, people start to act strange. And it's humanity which is your biggest threat in the movie. And it's also the same for the genre too, which took a lot of stuff wholesale from this movie. The other aspect of it is race. And this is not just a case of the film being filmed in black and white when colour was available. That was kind of just keeping the cost down because black and white film was cheaper at the time. No, George Romero cast a black actor as one of his main characters, which at the time is almost unheard of. And a very brave move by him. And a lot of people, for that reason, attribute this film to be about race as well. And acceptance of races and things like that. And to a certain extent, I can kind of see that. Because as an audience looking at it now from the 2000s and some things or others, the fact there is a black guy running around shooting guns and giving orders and being the intelligent survivalist of the group is not unusual. We've all seen Samuel Jackson. We've all seen Morgan Freeman do similar stuff. To us it's not unusual. To the Americans at the time it came out, in fact the world at the time it came out, it was a very interesting thing to look at. And a lot of people may have had grievances with it at the time. Some people say that the reason why the main protagonist dies at the end, and yes, I am going to spoil this movie, it is old enough for me to do that, is because of race. And the honest truth is, looking back at that scene, he dies through misidentification. He's hiding around, moving around in the shadows when people come to save everybody, and they misunderstand him as being one of the many zombies they've mowed down up until this point, and they shoot him dead. It's a very tragic ending to a very horrific story up until that point, and it has a very powerful impact in the fact that unfortunately nobody gets out. And there has been a remake of this film, and there have been sequels to it, several sequels in fact, which I will talk about again in the future. But for the time being, I would say it's definitely worth a watch, primarily because it's free, practically. It's in the public domain, which means that, to my understanding, legally speaking, you can download this and there'll be no repercussions for doing so. Also, because it's in the public domain, if you want a physical hard copy of it, they're usually incredibly cheap. I picked mine up at the pound shop, which is like the dollar store in America, for example. And you are going to find it that cheap. If you're paying more than a couple of pounds or a couple of dollars for it, you're being ripped off, because the honest truth is that whoever's publishing this stuff doesn't have the rights to it, because nobody does, and they're just making a little bit of money off it. Overall, I would say that it doesn't hold up the test of time, but it's a great little time capsule of stuff that was around at that moment. A lot of the themes, which were very powerful when it came out, aren't so much anymore because we're desensitized to the ideas behind it. So overall, I give this movie a 3 out of 5. I do recommend it, but I would say that there are better films out there in the genre today. Okay guys, thank you for everybody watching the first episode of the Captain Machine Show. Your support is greatly appreciated, and thank you for sitting all the way through to the very end. Please feel free to leave a comment or any constructive criticisms below. Thumbs up the video if you enjoyed it, add it to your favourites if you liked it a lot, because that all helps make the video more visible to people that type in the keywords associated with this show. Also, you can feel free to either private message me on the channel, you can get in touch with me and follow me on Twitter via CPT Machine, or you can get me on by email at captainmachineshow@gmail.com. Okay guys, thank you for your time, hope you've enjoyed the show, and don't worry, I hope to have episode 2 out relatively soon. Thanks for your time, and goodbye.